But it was in Arizona today that we got a glimpse of the next frontier in how Republicans will try to criminalize abortion at the state level and maybe eventually outlaw it on the national level. Today, a federal judge heard arguments on whether Arizona's fetal personhood law should be allowed to stand in the wake of Roe v. Wade being overturned. The law, signed by the state's Republican governor last year, confers all the same rights as people who have already been born onto fetuses, embryos, and even fertilized eggs. Now, there are at least two other anti-abortion laws on the books in Arizona, the legal status of which are currently being disputed. But Arizona's abortion providers say that regardless of how these legal fights resolve, they cannot perform abortions with this fetal personhood law in effect because they fear it could be used to charge them with all kinds of crimes. Organizations, including the Center for Reproductive Rights, are asking a judge to block the law because it's far too broad and vague. If you perform an abortion of a fetus that has all the rights of a person who's been born, is that assault? Is it child abuse? Is it murder? What are the criminal consequences for providers? The response from Arizona's Republican Attorney General appears to be basically mess around and find out. Basically, do an abortion and see if anyone tries to prosecute you, or go to a judge beforehand to try to get a ruling on a case-by-case basis that you won't get prosecuted. It's easy to see how the potential ramifications of a fetal personhood bill in a post-Roe America get very murky and very scary very quickly. If a fetus has all the rights of a person, do miscarriages get investigated by police? Could there be wrongful death lawsuits brought against doctors who perform abortions? Could pregnant women be denied life-saving care that would hurt or damage a fetus because doctors would be afraid of violating that fetus's rights? If the Arizona law stands, it could become the Wild West of potential investigations and prosecutions of women and healthcare providers. It will, of course, be the model for other Republican-led states. And if Arizona's fetal personhood law, or one in another state, makes it to the Supreme Court, what do you think are the chances that this Supreme Court confers personhood on fetuses nationwide? Things have gotten very bad very quickly in lots of states since Roe was overturned, and it's only been 2 weeks. They're just getting started. Joining us now is Fatima Goss-Graves, President and CEO of the National Women's Law Center. Ms. Graves, thank you so much for being with us. It's good to have you here again. I think we have to get our head around this fetal personhood law in Arizona. I described it as potentially the next frontier in efforts to criminalize abortion. You know a lot more about these things. Do you see it that way?
There's no question. This has always been the end game. It has never been enough just to ban abortion or to criminalize abortion. Their goal is to grant fetuses the same status in the Constitution and in the law as women. And you even saw some undertones of that in Justice Alito's opinion. So I understand why states are now encouraged to go even further than the existing bans to ban abortion and convey personhood. And I want to be clear, the Center for Reproductive Rights is vague. It's vague in terms of the consequences, but it's also vague in terms of precisely which conduct is prohibited. Are we talking about contraception? Are we talking about IVF? What is it exactly?
How much of that vagueness is intended to cast a chill across the board upon everyone who either is seeking an abortion or anyone who might advise them?
Well, unfortunately, we are already seeing a chilling effect, not just in Arizona, and that's entirely the goal. Even in places where abortion is still legal, you have providers who are concerned about civil suits or potential criminal liability. You have pharmacists who are concerned about dispensing medication, and you have the wide swath of people who I'll just call the helpers, who are worried if they support anyone who is seeking abortion care, that they will find themselves in legal jeopardy. That's why it was important that in today's executive order that the Attorney General will be providing more technical assistance and guidance, because it is basically legal chaos right now.
In fact, your organization put out a statement commending the executive order. Other than that role for the Attorney General to provide some technical guidance, what is it in that executive order that you're happy to see?
I was happy to see that they put the full weight of the government behind this problem with a cross-agency task force. So that to me says that you understand it is not just a public health emergency or just even a legal emergency, that we need the whole government involved. But I also thought it was important that HHS has some timelines. You know, these types of things can drag on, and we are not in a drag on state. We're in a state of emergency. And so Health and Human Services was instructed to come back within 30 days. And then the other thing that I think is really worth noting is the specific naming of our privacy and digital security. Right now, you're seeing reports of people deleting their apps that they use to track menstrual cycles, and a lot of worry that governors, attorney generals, local district attorneys will use that data, that unsecured data, to prosecute women, to prosecute providers, anyone who's supporting them. It's also unsafe, and so having more guidance there is important.
There's still a lot of pushback against the administration, with people saying it's too timid. They could be doing much more. What's your take on that?
Oh, I think they can do more. So I don't see this as the end, and it's my deep hope that it is not the end. It has been 2 weeks since the decision, and so I saw that as an executive order of what they felt like they need to do to respond to these next 2 weeks. I joined the many calls for them to declare a public health emergency. I think this is a time where every policymaker needs to think about things that they wouldn't have done in usual times. We are now dealing with rogue state lawmakers that are passing unconstitutional law and a Supreme Court that's being non-responsive. We need everyone to act.
Fatima Gosgraves, thank you for your time tonight. Fatima is the president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center. We always appreciate you taking time to talk to us.